Welcome, everybody, to the AI Caveman podcast. We're going to jump into the first of the mini episodes, not so many, a little bit longer. And we're going to jump in right in, and I'm going to make a crazy statement right off the bat. I believe fully that AI powered FPV drones are far more dangerous, far scarier than modern nuclear weapons. I mean that. And I'm going to have to defend that statement. That statement was meant to grab you because I think, although it sounds crazy, it actually accentuates how much AI has changed everything and how deeply it has changed the things that it has changed. I struggle to find a single industry, and I mean this, I struggle to find a single industry where AI isn't revamping everything. New industries are being created. Some old are going to die as well. But I think one of the things that gets missed most is just how impactful AI is in the day to day, how quickly everything is changing. So I made a crazy statement. I also realized that I have a whiteboard behind me with a bunch of things haphazardly scribbled, which doesn't help my case that I'm not crazy. But let's get to it. So I often say it's the math that really shows how AI is changing things. So I had a opportunity to hang out with some folks last night and teach some entry level artificial intelligence in a practical sense. Let's give you some skill sets to go and some exposure to some new tools so you can go back and use those in your place of business, your home, whatever. And I said it's the math in my industry that's really changed things. So I'm in the development industry. We build AI here. We build systems for businesses that are obviously AI powered. And though my industry, the software development industry, has absolutely experienced some changes, has taken some big hits. For instance, website development, modern AI tools are just there. They can just do it. They can do it really well. If you put your AI versus the best web developer in the world, and I mean simple, informative websites, I'm not talking about complex things, you may get some difference, but it's going to be negligible. So it's really the math that's being changed that you can point to and say that's what AI is doing. So though websites are kind of AI's territory now, that's actually creating a situation where there's a lot more websites, and websites can be used for different things. But that's not the point for the day. I made a crazy statement, and now I have to defend it. I'm more afraid of AI-powered FPV drones than I am modern nuclear weapons. So what's an FPV drone? Let's start off with that. That's one of these guys right here, first-person view drone. I got this from Walmart. These aren't necessarily the ones I'm afraid of, but they have all the parts and pieces in them. When I say modern nuclear weapons, let me qualify that. I do mean thermonuclear weapons, the big bad boys we have now, measured in megatons, not kilotons, because the math. One nuclear weapon that the United States produces, so maybe more expensive than most, is about 270 million. You can argue on that price, core, 250 million, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. But to have one of these things for its lifespan from cradle to grave, about 250 million bucks. And again, that you got to have special facilities for them. You can't let the public touch them. There's security. There's really expensive, precise handling for the uranium and the actual, warheads that are in them. And these don't need any of that. So not only is there like a direct price competition, there's some like logistical benefits. So let's get into it. For the same price as a modern nuclear weapon, which everyone will know about, there are rules and laws in place. You will absolutely be the bad guy on the world stage if you use one, no matter how small. It's a no-no, and there are deep political implications if any country uses a nuclear weapon. For the same price as one of those, so about 270 million bucks, for what we're seeing, the price tags of this, which is an FPV drone, mixed with this, which is a replica, it's not real, of an RPG-7 warhead. This goes like so, and sometimes we even see them put on with duct tape. Obviously, that's not the best way, but this is the device I'm speaking about when I say these scare me more than modern nuclear weapons. So for the same price, 270 million bucks, you can get about 250 to 300,000 FPV drones that are AI powered. And again, the math of that, I'm using about 500 bucks for one of these because Ukraine is now kind of producing them at scale. And by the way, that number might be even less when they're built really at scale. So that is a swarm of 250,000 of those for the same buying purchase power parity as one nuclear weapon. So why am I more afraid of these? Well, let's go into a little bit about what one of these can do. And we're going to start off with a very interesting statistic about the war in Ukraine right now. For the first time in warfare's history, as far as I know, there are more killed than injured. And that's really recent. That's in the last, several months or so, which is weird in war, right? Because, hey, if you get shot here, you might not necessarily die, but you're definitely injured, right? It's easier to injure someone than kill. So historically, been more people who got injured than killed. The new data that's coming out of the Ukraine war is that more people, specifically Russians, are dying as opposed to being injured. And I think it's pretty clear why. Because when you pair this with one of these, like so, you have a system that has an inbuilt guidance, right? And these are, again, pretty cheap. These are even cheaper. Some places in the world you can get this for about 50 or 60 bucks. And this may look boring, right? Doesn't have any fins, doesn't have any cameras, right? It doesn't need it because it has this. This silly thing, which is a replica of an RPG-7 warhead, can penetrate, on the low side, 300 millimeters, or for us who are back-to-back World War champions, 12 inches. So 1 foot. It can penetrate a foot of rolled homogeneous steel. So think tool steel, really good steel. And even if you were to hide behind 6 inches of rolled homogeneous steel, armored steel, you're still going to die. Because it still has another 6 inches of penetration left. And by the way, you're not made out of rolled homogeneous steel. So I don't know what the number of humans it could go through, but it's a lot. FPV drones have been around for a long time now and kind of been used in war as well. So like, what's up with the new, statement that more afraid of those than nuclear weapons? Well, FPV drones used to require this, much better version of this, but it had to have a control. There had to be a person who does this and watches a little screen to hit a target. But these got jammed because this just worked with radio frequency, right? It's RC, remote control, uses radio frequency, and they could jam those. So an evolution happened where instead of a radio signal controlling them, they started to use fiber optic cable, and I'm not certain you can see that. This is fishing string, but it's a good analog for fiber optic cable. And you can see some problems in this. You need a lot of this for distance, right? 10 miles of that is heavy. It can get cut. There are problems with that. So on this war front that we're seeing unfold right now, it was pretty obvious that the next step was going to be, what if we just had AI internal to the drone? And by the way, you don't need top of the line AI. What if we could just put AI into these, marry them with these, because this already comes with a camera. AI is really good. Like, it's gotten really good at image recognition. So this little guy can just simply fly up, look at the ground, match that picture of the ground to a map, and know exactly where it's at. If it knows where it's at, it knows where it isn't. And if you get a destination or a picture of some other place, it can reference that map and it can get to that place without GPS. It can use the picture of the ground. So it really can't be jammed. It can't be fried, right? You can put enough electromagnetivity in the air that the internals get cooked. But remember, there's a lot of these things. So now we have FPV drones married with AI. Not only can they not be jammed in an effective way, not yet at least, they can get from point A to point B. And point B can be tens, if not hundreds of miles away. But then once it gets to that point, let's call it the target point, it can also use image recognition to decide what it's going to execute. It can absolutely recognize what kind of camo somebody has and be determined, hey, go blow up XYZ. It can be used to hit light poles, infrastructure, power grids, people, fuel trucks, whatever. And that's not theory any longer. We're actually seeing that happen. The Ukrainians and the Russians, and by the way, we're there too. There's dozens of U.S. defense contractors studying how the Ukrainians are using them right now. So everybody's in that game, right? It's already there. The decision that started way back when Obama was in office in 2009 about drone strikes and where drones and AI should be involved, that's no longer a conversation. The technology defined what the rules and laws were because we didn't do that first. And I really would like to prevent that in other situations. So I made the statement, I'm more afraid of those than I am nuclear weapons. They can't really be stopped en masse. There isn't any current international laws, state laws, anything like that. When I say state, I mean big S, states as in other governments, on where and when you can use them that aren't already there, right? These machines, again, for the same price of one nuclear weapon, you can have hundreds of thousands of these, and they can just be stored in a warehouse. They can be activated whenever you need them. They're cheap to build. So even if you don't have a bunch of them, you could build a whole lot of them really quickly. You can limit what countries in the world have access to nuclear weapons. We're kind of in a big fight about that right now, where the world and the United States said, hey, you can't have nuclear weapons. We're pretty sure you're not going to use them, right? Which, again, that's a whole nother argument. There isn't any international law to what countries can or can't use autonomous AI-powered FPV drones. Now, I know the shock value of a nuclear weapon going off would be awful, right? You go from room temperature to essentially the surface of the sun in a microsecond. Unimaginable power. But again, you're going to get into a lot of trouble if you do that as a country. There are rules and laws in place. There are rules and laws in place and organizations that are specifically meant to keep nuclear weapons out of other countries' hands. We've had discussions and negotiations to remove nuclear weapons. Funnily enough, Ukraine was one of the countries that gave up its nuclear weapons. But we have no regulation, no way to stop this. So what is to stop the bad actors of the world, the bad guys, from saying, hey, nukes are expensive and I get a lot of heat for having them? Why don't I just build 400,000 FPV AI-enabled drones that once I set them off, I give them a course, I give them a destination, there is no way of turning them off. There's no way to jam them. You might get some, you might get most, but I would make the argument that if any major city were to be attacked by even 10,000 drones, let alone hundreds of thousands, the equivalent, right, the actual effect on that city may as well be a nuclear weapon. There will be fires everywhere. And again, remember, those little guys can go through a foot of steel. Building foundations are not going to stand up to that. Again, there'll be fires everywhere. And they have AI in them. They can be used to specifically target the most vulnerable: gas lines, power, first responders. There can be waves of them where, hey, they all go in and hit, and the next wave waits for our guys, our heroes, our police, our whoever to go in afterwards, and then the next wave hits. I know that sounds crazy. This episode was meant to grab you. I know this is a bit extreme, and no, this is not what the channel is going to be like in its entirety. But I wanted to cover something that has not really made the news. Like, we see the drone attacks, we see that, but we're not focusing on the technology and where it's at now and what could happen with this technology. So, to kind of make some final statements here, nuclear weapons are heavily regulated and they're not easy to build. Easy is a relative term. AI is actually making nuclear weapon assembly and creation a lot easier. But they're regulated. They're hard to get. Once you have them, kind of everybody knows you have them. You need delivery systems. You need infrastructure around it. And they're in one place. And if there's one place, right, then they can be destroyed. The distributed nature of a swarm of FPV drones that don't need networked. They could be networked, but they don't need anything else outside of a program that says, here's what you do. You don't need any external sources. They don't need the internet. They don't need connectivity. Again, they can have connectivity, makes them even worse, even scarier. That is a far easier weapon system for a small country, a third world country to get and deploy. It's at least equivalent for your buying power. So if I spend X amount of money, I get X amount of boom to a nuclear weapon. I think that argument is pretty easily to be made. And we may be able to shoot down a nuclear weapon if it's ever shot at us, maybe one or two. We cannot, and by the way, this is not argued, especially even by our military, that if a sizable enough drone swarm powered by AI were to attack a US base, a US city, there isn't much you can do. There isn't much you can do. Now, luckily, as a country, we're surrounded by oceans, so distance is a factor. But again, what I wanted to highlight is this technology is changing everything. And I wanted to do it in a sort of flashy way. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'm kind of interested in making a much more in-depth episode of this because, by the way, we have touched maybe 1% of just this topic. So if this is interesting to you, let me know, and we're going to do a follow-up episode, and it's going to go even more in depth, and there's a lot to talk about. Thanks for watching. See you next time.